As I alluded to in my overarching review of 1.62 on Thursday, this really is one of those cars where the more you look into it, the more you drive it, the more you try to use it, the more you realise just what a wasted opportunity this car really is, and you can't really blame Corvette for it. I don't know how much involvement or development Polyphony has there. Maybe they just follow what the company wants to do, I would imagine, but I'm not sure. I don't recall if that's been touched on more so in videos or not. When they finally get it in the game, much like fully electric vehicles, there's just precious little to do with certain cars that they're almost too quick to be of any use, kind of Tomahawk or Red Bull style 9 times out of 10, except unlike those cars, they don't have their own events to benefit from. So this, for example, was pretty much the only way I could drive this car in fully built form in any kind of serious race, at least against the AI. Now, take it up against real people, of course, that's a different thing, but not everyone wants to do that. Sometimes you just want a quote-unquote career mode experience, or just get the chance to, I don't know, use a car you just paid 1 million credits for. So where can you use it? Well, therein lies the problem. You kind of can't. In fact, here's the real irony. The only way that you can actually get any kind of use out of this car, and there's still a huge caveat above this, as I've alluded to again on Thursday, but it bears saying again for those who didn't watch that video, the only way you can get any significant use out of this car is to reduce it down to at least the 900 point level, which is a hell of a lot lower than it is when standard. At 1003 points, it has one of the highest point levels in the game. You have to take this thing down from its huge amount of standard horsepower, 2038, to more like 1200 to even allow it into events. You've got to up the weight from 1250 to about 1400 kilos, and you can just about then get into the 900 point category. I tried using it, as I said, in the Spa event. I might reuse some footage from that, but either way, you'll see what I'm talking about. The problem is, of course, the higher the power, the quicker it runs through its boost system, which usually wouldn't be too much of a problem. You'll notice a bit of a performance drop, but in the case of this car, it is a massive, a colossal drop in performance, in fact, and here at Le Mans, it really showcases that. In the footage on Thursday, from when I drove this car, it was detuned to the 900 point level. By lap 3 of Spa, it was done in terms of boost, and then you could see that drop in performance. Here at Le Mans, it's even more drastic. It's a huge drop off in terms of performance here compared to on Spa, because here I'm running over 2,000 horses, of course over 260 miles an hour on the straight, so it's properly quick by VGT or non-VGT standards. Even by Group 1 standards, it could be a tremendously good car, but even without fuel use, once you run out of boost, that's it. And the only slight silver lining to that is that 9 times out of 10, at least if you're driving it in this full powered form, you're going to be up against the same car, like I am here, so they'll all run out of boost as well. So I guess you could see that as a positive thing, but it really isn't. The more insulting problem to me is that when you do reduce it down to, for example, the 900 point level, or maybe you could try and get it even lower, but I don't think you could get this to 850, not without drastically reducing the tyre quality at least, and then I guess you could. The salt in the wound for me on this car though is that when you do actually reduce it to that 900 point level, it's actually better when it's got this huge amount of power going down to the road. It feels quick for sure in a straight line, but it turns it into essentially what like the CX version is, which we'll talk about tomorrow, which is kind of just a straight line missile. This one is definitely better, but I would say I had a lot more fun, even with the ridiculous boost run out on Spa at 900 points than I did here on literally my favourite circuit. And to me that says more about how badly this car and many like it are implemented into the game than it does about Corvette. And although, as I said, I don't know where the blame would really lie, I would imagine it's more so on Polyphony than on Corvette. They could design whatever car they want pretty much, but then it's up to Polyphony to implement that car into the game in a useful way, and they've just completely dropped the ball on that. They haven't just dropped the ball for cars like this, they've just stuck a Stanley blade in the ball so that nobody can use it. Now, as I said, I will talk about the CX version tomorrow, which has all of its own issues as well, but it feels like a huge missed opportunity. The fact that these cars are very odd when it comes to whether or not they're categorized as Vision GTs in terms of which events you can or can't use them in, and one of the biggest problems with this car is that despite feeling as kind of pointless 9 times out of 10 as something like a Tomahawk, it doesn't have the meme factor, it doesn't have the ridiculous factor of the Tomahawk, wherein people actually do enjoy using that for stuff like Special Stage Route X racing because it's so stupidly quick in a straight line. This doesn't even have that going for it because it is quick, but it's nowhere near a Tomahawk. It's more like an LMP car with a built-up engine. 260 isn't really that crazy when you think about it. It's quick, but not for a 2,000 horsepower prototype style car. Ultimately, it's one of those cars that I'd love to be able to praise more because it looks fantastic, it's got a huge amount of potential, and in a different game at a different time, it probably would be more of a legend, but like many of the Vision GT or similar kind of cars, it tends to be a lot of electric cars as well in general. The Volkswagen IDR always comes to mind. Legendary car, destroyed lap records all over the place, and yet it's a car which barely anyone uses in Gran Turismo 7, which is such a shame. This kind of feels like that. Another very strange example of marketing, because on the one hand, yes, it attracts some positive attention to Corvette, but the reality is the people who are actually using this car, in other words, all of us here in the game, well, we're not saying positive things about it, which is kind of, again, anti-marketing. It really is a situation where I could imagine a lot of companies not wanting to work with Polyphony if they have their finger on the pulse at all of how people actually respond to these cars. If you just check out, the official Gran Turismo page or whatever else, I'm sure it will be a bunch of yes men, but if you look deeper than that into the community, you're going to see a lot of negativity. And if I were a manufacturer, a mark, a brand, whatever, I don't think I'd necessarily want to be associated with the game in that way. That's it for my thoughts though on this car. I would be really curious to hear yours down below, and of course also your thoughts tomorrow on the CX version, that fully electric, even more powerful monster of a car in more of a quote-unquote street level trim, you could say. So we'll talk about that one tomorrow. Then of course we'll get to the Afeela, so stick around for that one. I've actually got more positive things than you would think to say about that car, which is very strange compared to these ones. That's it for now though. I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.